up, everyone? My name is Desiree LeCap, aka LeCapture. I'm a filmmaker who also shares educational tips and tricks all across social media. In the introduction you just saw, that was solely shot handheld. Granted, some were filmed while tracking in a car or on a skateboard, but did you see how smooth it was? So actually, in this video, we're gonna walk through handheld or IBIS, meaning in-body image stabilization, versus gimbals. Let's talk about it. Starting with the gear, I shot with the Lumix S5IIX using the 24-70 and the 14-28mm. And let me tell you, the IBIS built into that camera is mad impressive. As for the gimbal, I was using the DJI RS2. All right. Before we get on with a little debate though, let's talk about the stabilization features on the camera. For video mode, the camera is actually designed with a newly developed active image stabilization system for walking shots to further enhance image stabilization while camera is moving and recording video, as y'all saw. Later on in this video, I'll show a lot of examples and differences with stabilization being on and off. So basically, it really eliminates the shakiness in your footage. So IBIS is always in camera, and for that reason, in most or certain situations, it's honestly, a no-brainer. It will take your otherwise useless handheld shots and make it almost feel like it's cheating because the footage actually becomes usable. Throughout this video, keep in mind that gimbals, cameras, and lenses all perform differently depending on the individual build. Okay, the moment of truth, comparing gimbal versus handheld. So I thought the best way to show how much of a beast the IBIS is on this camera, I wanted to get somewhat of action shots, and what better way than a skater? I want to know your thoughts, all right? I'm gonna put some side-by-side behind the scenes plus results to actually prove to y'all that I was handheld or that I was gimbal. Then I'm gonna show you side-by-side gimbal and handheld clips together. Let's take a look. All right, now that we witnessed the comparison and we understand in-body stabilization, let's dive into the pros and cons for handheld versus gimbals. Starting with some pros. Handheld filmmaking is like the heartbeat of cinema, right? It's raw, dynamic, and captures like the spontaneous moments. Sometimes that slight shake or subtle sway adds an artistic touch that gimbals actually might lack. In my opinion, it's about embracing imperfections and telling a story with a human touch. So the advantages to filming handheld is that you don't need any additional equipment because the IBIS is built into the camera. So in fast-paced situations or when you need to adapt quickly, handheld setups shine the most. I would have to say they're lightweight, agile, and perfect for run and gun situations, also offering us the flexibility to navigate in tight spaces with ease, right? Not having to hold the gimbal. Like, the only con, which doesn't feel like a con really, is like depending on your camera and the ability to set stabilization, it can cause too much shakiness within your footage that it becomes unusable. I would have to say adding weight to your camera helps with stabilizing it. So with any camera, adding a cage and handles makes it more comfortable for you to capture low angle, tracking shots, and help stabilize your footage if your camera doesn't include a really good IBIS system. Now, on the other hand, gimbals are a mechanical stabilizing device that uses motors and sensors to keep the camera steady. It allows for smooth and precise control of the camera's movements, and then, of course, creates smooth, dynamic, cinematic shots. But to be honest, when I first started using a gimbal, it looked a lot easier said than actually done. It took me a while to actually understand the fluid movement of a gimbal to where I had full control, and oftentimes I would miss a shot because of how mechanical and complicated it was in the beginning. So a con to gimbals can often be the additional equipment, right? Gimbals are separate devices that need to be carried and set up, and then adding to the overall size and weight to your equipment. And lastly, but not really lastly, it's definitely the cost of gimbals can be relatively expensive compared to cameras with built-in IBIS. So in my opinion, if you were just starting out, you would learn a lot more by filming handheld because the learning curve of operating a gimbal requires a ton of practice to actually achieve smooth results. My very first camera actually was a Canon 70D, and when I look back at the footage now, I don't recall that camera having in-body stabilization. So I was filming handheld for a very long time before I actually invested in my first gimbal. And that helped me a lot with learning certain angles and focal lengths and cinematography in general. Now, regarding when it's best to use handheld or gimbal, it's a little bit similar to the pros and cons I just mentioned. When we're talking about real life use cases with this camera, that can actually be a really big deal. Being able to practically use handheld footage and not feel the need to have to upgrade to a gimbal to make sure you're getting that solid, stable footage. So honestly, it really is reassuring to have a camera with amazing stabilization. It's best to use handheld for portability and convenience, right? Handheld shooting is way more convenient for quick, spontaneous captures, or if you're on the go or shooting in tight spaces, handheld might be the better option. Now, we spoke about these earlier, but we're gonna elaborate on it more. We have run and gun situations. This is the best scenario to use handheld filmmaking. In fast-paced or unpredictable shooting environments, handheld shooting allows for quick adjustments and flexibility without the need to have to set up and rebalance a gimbal, change the lens, rebalance it again. It's just depends on your environment. Now, for casual and personal videos, for like vlogs, travel videos, for any situation where the polished look of a gimbal isn't completely necessary, handheld shooting can add a more natural and authentic feel to your content. Next, it is the minimalist setup that we love. If you prefer a minimalist setup, right, or don't want to carry additional equipment, shooting handheld, of course, may be the more straightforward choice for you. Lastly, budget constraints. Gimbals can be relatively expensive, and if you're on a tight budget, using your camera or a smartphone, handheld might be a more cost-effective option. So generally, there are situations where you might even want to deactivate IBIS, especially if you're aiming for the camera to be a character itself. It's like creating that unsteady look to enhance how the audience feels towards the characters. Now, as for times you may prefer a gimbal, can be when one, stability is crucial, right? Gimbals are designed to provide smooth and stabilized footage. So if you're shooting in challenging conditions such as walking or moving shots that require way more stabilization than a camera that has built-in image stabilization, then a gimbal can help eliminate the shakes and extra jitters. So for high quality video production where smooth and professional looking footage is essential, then a gimbal is often preferred there. And then of course, if you're trying to get precise movement, gimbals allow for more precise control over the camera movement. And some advanced gimbals even come with features like follow focus and being able to program your movements. So if you're actually trying to get certain shots that look and feel mechanic, then a gimbal may help you achieve that. So of course, you could get creative shots with any type of camera movement, static, handheld, or on a gimbal. So with gimbal specifically, it enables you to achieve creative and dynamic shots such as smooth pans, tilts, and tracking shots that might be sometimes challenging to execute depending on what type of camera you have. Now that we've kind of gotten back and forth with the debate between handheld versus gimbal and when it's good to use handheld or when it's better to use handheld versus gimbal. I mean, hey. Point of this is I want to show you guys the stabilization on this camera because honestly it's something I haven't experienced before. We'll start with all of the stabilization being off. Nothing is active, not the active IS, not the boost IS, or not the E stabilization. I'm just gonna show you guys what that looks like. So let's go ahead and take a walk along the water. Emphasizing my steps a little bit because I am on a little sandy part right here. We're next to the water. All the settings off. I'm gonna try to run now if I can. I'm gonna run with my right though. All right. I'm actually not a runner, I'm not a track star, so it's just for testing purposes. All right, this is all off. Nothing is on. Now I just have the operation mode on the camera right here. So I think it's just the basic stabilization. Now I only have the active on, all right? I'm just gonna run this pathway here. I'm running, y'all. This is boost IS on. This is all of it on with the E stabilization. I'm gonna run. Damn, it looks pretty smooth. Okay, keep in mind I'm using the 14 to 28, so a little bit wider. You can see the warping around the corners. So overall, ultimately, the choice between using a gimbal or shooting handheld really depends on your specific use of case, right? The type of content you're creating and really your personal preferences. Some videographers and photographers even use a combination of both methods in different situations. For me personally, I'm leaning more towards handheld footage just because of the convenience, and also it does give this look and feel that the gimbal just can't achieve. So yeah, I definitely want to know your thoughts on whether or not you think you need a gimbal for what you do, or if you're better off shooting handheld, rigging up your camera or your phone, putting it on a tripod even for some beautiful creative static shots, whatever it is. I just hope that you go out and create whatever you'd like to create without anybody telling you otherwise. All right, y'all. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below and tell me what you think because I want to know. Do you really need a gimbal in some cases or most? Let me know. In the meantime, like, comment, share, and subscribe because y'all already know more fire content on the way. Regardless, I appreciate each and every one of you. Be great, go out and create, and have fun doing it. I'll see y'all at the next video. Peace.